You know, one of the fastest ways people lose respect in a conversation, they over-explain themselves. It's something we've all done, and most of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it. We think we're being polite, we think we're giving context, we think we're making things easier for the other person to understand. But what we're really doing is sending a signal: I don't fully believe in what I'm saying, so let me pile on extra words to try to make you believe it. And here's the truth. Confident people don't over-explain. They state they stop, and they let the silence do the work. Think about it. You show up late to a meeting, and instead of simply saying, "Thanks for waiting," what do most of us do? We launch into a whole story. Sorry, traffic was crazy, and then the lights were all red, and I couldn't find parking, and by the time you're done, you've painted yourself as unreliable, flustered, and insecure. You've given away power, whereas the person who calmly walks in, acknowledges the delay with grace, and keeps it short communicates something very different. I respect your time, and I still belong here. Over-explaining doesn't just happen when we're late. It shows up in little everyday conversations. Someone asks for your opinion, and instead of giving a clear answer, you wrap it in layers of justification. Well, I mean, this is just my opinion, but I was kind of thinking maybe if it's okay with you, we could. What's happening there? You're unconsciously asking for permission to exist in the conversation. And when you do that, people don't just hear your words, they hear your doubt. Now here's the key. Confidence is not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about clarity. It's about trusting that your words carry weight, even if they're simple. You don't need to build a fence of explanations around them to protect them. When you say less, people lean in more. When you cut out the fluff, people hear the strength. Here's a quick test. The next time you feel the urge to justify yourself, pause and ask, what's the cleanest version of what I want to say? Then stop right there. No extra fluff, no add-ons, just the statement itself. Let's go back to that late example. Instead of "Sorry, I had traffic, the dog got sick, my phone wasn't charging, I couldn't find my keys," cut it down to "Thanks for waiting. That's all." Notice how that feels. It doesn't shrink you. It doesn't make excuses. It acknowledges the other person without sacrificing your presence. And here's what happens when you stop over-explaining. People start to respect your words more. Because you're not flooding them with a river of reasons, you're giving them a solid stone to step on. Clear, firm, steady. You teach people how to treat you by the way you communicate. And if every sentence you say sounds like a defense, people will always feel like they have the upper hand. But if your sentences sound like decisions, like clarity, then people will listen differently. Of course, some of you might be thinking, but won't I come off as rude if I don't explain myself? No, clarity is not rudeness. In fact, it's kindness. People don't want to sift through all your justifications. They want your answer. They want your thought. And when you give it to them directly, you're actually respecting their time more. You're showing that you value the exchange, so stop thinking you owe everyone a novel every time you open your mouth. You don't. Say what you mean, then stop. Let your words carry their own weight. Trust me, the less you explain, the more power you'll have. Have you ever listened back to yourself in a conversation and realized how many times you said like, you know, or actually? Most of us don't catch it in the moment, but those tiny filler words sneak into our speech all the time. And while they seem harmless, they send a subtle message that you're not fully sure of yourself, that you're reaching for space to think, or that you're softening what you're about to say. Here's the problem. Those little words may feel small to you, but they make a big difference in how people perceive your confidence. Think about the last time you heard someone who really held your attention. Chances are it wasn't because they spoke the fastest or filled every gap in the conversation. It was because they spoke with intention. Their words had weight. They weren't in a rush to patch every pause with ooh or like. They let silence do the heavy lifting. Silence, by the way, is one of the most powerful communication tools you have. Filler words are usually a sign of nervous energy. We use them because we don't want silence to feel awkward, and we're afraid if we stop talking, people will lose interest. But it's the opposite. When you cut out the fillers and replace them with calm pauses, you show control. You show that you're not scrambling for approval. You're delivering a message worth waiting for. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone saying, "So, I think, like, the project is actually going to be fine, you know." That sentence tells you nothing with confidence. Now strip it down. The project is going to be fine. Same idea, but worlds apart in how it lands. The first version sounds uncertain, hesitant. The second sounds steady and sure. People aren't just listening to your words. They're listening to the way your words carry themselves. This doesn't mean you need to sound robotic or stripped of personality. It just means you choose your words with care. Every time you pause instead of filling the space, you're building anticipation. You're giving your listener time to catch up and really take in what you're saying. And you're reminding them that your presence is strong enough to sit in silence for a beat. Now, I know this can feel uncomfortable at first. The urge to say or like will be strong, especially in conversations where you're nervous or under pressure. But here's the shift. Instead of fighting the silence, lean into it. A pause doesn't mean you're unprepared. It means you're thoughtful. It means you value your words enough not to throw them away in a rush. People often mistake speed for confidence, but the truth is, confidence lives in pacing. Someone who races through every sentence with a trail of fillers sounds like they're trying to keep up with themselves. Someone who speaks at a steady rhythm, who pauses when needed, who cuts out the fluff, that's the person who sounds like they know exactly what they're saying. Try this exercise. The next time you catch yourself about to say or like, stop. Take a breath. Let a pause fill the space instead. At first, it will feel unnatural, but soon you'll notice that people lean in during those pauses. They wait because you've created a sense that what's coming next matters. And isn't that the point of communication, to make your words matter? One of the most common habits that quietly undermines your presence in a conversation is the way you turn statements into questions. And most people don't even realize they're doing it. You might say something like, "I think we should go with this plan, right?" Or "This looks good, doesn't it?" On the surface, it seems harmless, maybe even polite. But what it's really doing is stripping the confidence out of your words. You're not just sharing your thought, you're asking permission for it to exist. And when you do that, people stop seeing you as someone who leads the conversation and start seeing you as someone who follows. The problem with ending statements like questions is that it sends a mixed signal. Your words say one thing, but your tone says another. You're essentially saying, "Here's what I think, but only if you agree with me." And when your communication carries that kind of uncertainty, people will always lean toward the doubt. They'll take your suggestion as an option to be debated instead of a direction to be respected. Now, this doesn't mean you have to walk around barking orders or pretending you always know best. Confidence isn't about being controlling, it's about clarity. When you believe in what you're saying, you don't need to wrap it in hesitation. You just say it. "Here's the plan. This is what I recommend. Let's move forward with this." Direct. Clear? No built-in question mark at the end. Think of it this way. People want to feel secure around you. They want to know that you're steady, that your words are grounded. And if every time you open your mouth it sounds like you're unsure, they don't just hear your insecurity, they feel it. And when people feel that, they won't follow your lead, even if your idea is the right one. This shift is especially important when dealing with difficult people. If someone is challenging you, the last thing you want to do is weaken your position by turning your voice upward, by framing your statements as if you're asking them for approval. Difficult people thrive on that. They can sense when you're unsure, and they'll use it to push back harder. But when you stand on your words, steady, calm, and without a question mark, you take away their leverage. Here's a practical adjustment you can start making today. Become aware of your tone at the end of your sentences. In English, questions naturally rise at the end, while statements stay steady or fall. So if you catch yourself saying, "We should probably handle it this way," check your tone. Replace it with, "We should handle it this way." Same words, different delivery, completely different impact. And remember, this doesn't just apply in meetings or professional settings. It shows up in your personal life too, with friends, family, partners. If you're constantly asking instead of stating, you teach people to see your words as suggestions rather than convictions. And if you want to be taken seriously, if you want your words to carry weight, you can't afford to always sound like you're looking for approval. So here's the takeaway. Your statements don't need a question mark. Say what you mean, let it land, and resist the urge to soften it with uncertainty. Because when you stop asking for permission to speak with confidence, people will stop treating you like someone who needs it. Have you ever noticed how often people apologize for things that don't even require an apology? It slips out so quickly. "Sorry to bother you," "Sorry, can I ask a quick question?" or "Sorry, I just wanted to check in." On the surface, it feels like politeness. But what it really communicates is that you believe you're an inconvenience, that your presence or your voice is somehow a disruption. And when you send that message often enough, people start to believe it. The truth is, not every situation calls for an apology. When you've genuinely hurt someone, of course, own it, say you're sorry, and make it right. But when you apologize simply for taking up space, for asking a question, or for doing something normal, you're shrinking yourself. You're telling the world, "I don't want to bother you, I don't really belong here, I hope I'm not too much." That kind of language chips away at your authority, and over time, it becomes a habit that keeps you from being respected. Now, think about how different it feels when you cut that out. Instead of saying, "Sorry to bother you, can I ask a question?" you say, "I have a question." Instead of, "Sorry, I just wanted to check in," you say, "I'm checking in." Same message, but without the apology, without the self. Shrinking. You go from sounding like someone who's trying not to step on toes to someone who belongs in the conversation. This is important, especially when dealing with difficult people. The moment you start over-apologizing, you give them the upper hand. They see that little crack in your confidence, and they'll push on it. They'll take your unnecessary sorry as a sign that they can dismiss you, that they can set the tone. But when you cut the apologies and speak directly, you remove that leverage. You're not hostile, you're not rude, you're just clear, and clarity commands respect. Here's what makes this tricky. Many of us were conditioned to believe that apologizing makes us polite, humble, and likable. But there's a difference between kindness and shrinking. Being kind doesn't mean you have to lower yourself in every interaction. Being respectful doesn't mean you have to apologize for existing. In fact, people often find it refreshing when someone speaks directly. It saves time, it shows confidence, and it communicates that you value both yourself and the other person enough not to waste words. Next time you catch yourself about to say sorry for something small, stop and reframe it. Replace it with gratitude or ownership. Instead of "sorry for the delay," say "thanks for your patience." Instead of "sorry to interrupt," say "I need to add something here." Notice the difference. One lowers you, the other lifts the moment. One makes you small, the other makes you steady. This isn't about stripping away empathy. It's about aligning your words with your worth. Every time you apologize unnecessarily, you teach people that you come second, that your needs or ideas aren't as valid. But every time you replace those empty apologies with confidence, you teach people that your presence matters. When someone challenges us, criticizes us, or throws an unnecessary jab, Our natural reaction is usually to defend ourselves. It's instinct. The moment we feel attacked, the walls go up, and we want to fire back with explanations, arguments, or even sarcasm. But here's the problem. Defensiveness rarely helps. In fact, it usually makes things worse. When you get defensive, you hand control of the conversation over to the other person. You're playing on their terms, reacting to their tone, and letting them set the energy. That doesn't build respect, it just keeps the conflict alive. There's a better way, and it starts with curiosity. Instead of snapping back, instead of meeting fire with fire, try leaning in with a simple question: what makes you say that? It seems almost too simple, but it's powerful because it shifts the dynamic. Instead of escalating the tension, you're inviting the other person to explain themselves. You're taking control, but in a calm and composed way. You're showing that you're not rattled, you're not intimidated, you're curious. Curiosity disarms people. It interrupts their momentum. Someone who comes at you expecting a fight doesn't know what to do when you respond with calm interest. They're ready for your defenses, ready for your excuses, ready for the back. And fourth, what they're not ready for is you standing there steady, asking them to unpack their words. That flips the pressure back onto them. Now they're the one who has to think, and here's the beauty of it: curiosity doesn't just protect your confidence, it also helps you understand people better. Sometimes, what feels like an attack isn't really about you. It's about the other person's stress, insecurity, or misunderstanding. By asking questions instead of reacting, you get to uncover that. You can't do that if you're too busy defending yourself. Imagine this: a coworker says, "You're not very reliable." The defensive instinct is to jump in with, "That's not true. I'm always on time. I did this, I did that." But notice what happens. You're now listing evidence like you're on trial, trying to prove your worth. You've given them the role of judge. But if you take a breath and ask, "What makes you say that?" the conversation changes. Now it's on them to explain, and often you'll find their statement wasn't even about your overall character. Maybe they were frustrated about one small thing, maybe they misunderstood, or maybe they're projecting their own issues. Either way, you hold the ground because you didn't rush to defend. You stayed calm and curious. This approach also works outside of work, in your personal relationships. If a friend or partner throws out, "You never listen to me," and you fire back defensively, you've just added fuel to the fire. But if you take a pause and say, "Can you tell me what makes you feel that way?" you've created space for dialogue instead of a fight. You've shown strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance. The key here is remembering that defensiveness feels strong in the moment, but it actually makes you weaker. It shows the other person that they've gotten under your skin. Curiosity, on the other hand, is quiet strength. It's control. It tells the other person, "I'm not here to fight you, but I'm also not going to crumble under your words." And that's a kind of presence that people remember. So the next time someone tries to drag you into an argument or knock you off balance, resist the urge to defend yourself. Take a breath, stay steady, and get curious. Because the moment you shift from defensive to curious, you stop giving away your power and start owning the conversation. Have you ever noticed how two people can say the exact same words, but one gets ignored while the other captures the entire room? It's not always about the message, it's about the energy behind the message. The way you deliver your words is just as important, sometimes even more important, than the words themselves. Too often, people confuse emotion with energy. They think raising their voice, showing frustration, or letting anger spill out will make others respect them. But what it really does is make them look out of control. Respect doesn't come from being the loudest or most emotional person in the room. Respect comes from bringing steady, focused energy that makes people stop and pay attention. Think about a time when someone started yelling at you. Did you respect them more because of it? Probably not. More likely, you tuned them out or braced yourself until they were done. But think about someone who spoke calmly, firmly, with a steady tone and clear eyes. That kind of presence makes you listen. You may not even agree with everything they say, but you can't help but take them seriously because they carry themselves with control. That's the difference between speaking with emotion and speaking with energy. Energy is measured, it's intentional, it's the quiet confidence that says, I know what I'm talking about, and I don't need to raise my voice to prove it. It's the ability to take the strongest emotions you're feeling, anger, frustration, even excitement, and channel them into clear, direct words. When you do that, people feel the weight of your presence without feeling attacked by it. This matters most when you're dealing with difficult people, because they want you emotional. They want you flustered, shouting, tripping over your words, losing control. That's when they win. But when you stay calm, when you lower your tone instead of raising it, when you slow down instead of speeding up, you throw them off balance. They don't know how to fight with someone who refuses to hand over their energy. And in that moment, you hold the power. You can practice this in small ways. Next time you're frustrated in a conversation, pay attention to your voice. Instead of letting it rise, bring it down. Instead of talking faster, slow yourself. Even your body language plays a role. Square your shoulders, breathe deeper, and let your energy show through steadiness rather than volatility. You'll notice people respond differently. They may not admit it out loud, but inside, they feel your authority. And here's another piece to remember. Energy doesn't always mean being intense. It also means being intentional with positivity. A person who speaks with warmth, clarity, and calm confidence draws people in just as much as someone who speaks with authority. Magnetic energy is about presence. It's about showing up in a way that makes people want to listen, not because they're afraid of you, but because they trust the strength in your voice. At the end of the day, your emotions are for you to process, but your energy is what the world experiences. If you let your emotions run wild in your speech, people feel chaos. If you learn to harness those emotions into calm, steady energy, people feel respect, and respect is what makes your words carry. So don't confuse being loud with being strong. Don't confuse emotional outbursts with real presence. Speak with energy that is steady, calm, and intentional, and watch how people can't help but lean in when you do.